America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my Rothschild niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day pimping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclosed Vic homes out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit, bitch, if not, better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas and get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
Welcome to Voice of Rebellion Radio. This is your host, Chris J. And tonight is the 26th of March, and we've had a pretty crazy week for sure in the world and whatnot. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind quick first is I wanted to mention about that Monday, right after last week's show, is that David Rockefeller finally kicked the bucket at 101 years old. David Rockefeller, which if you're not too familiar with him, was one of the most despicable human beings ever to live, and I'm not being in any way harsh by saying so. David Rockefeller had a major part in the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission. These are gigantic think tanks that are more powerful than the president. They ultimately are some of the actual people that are actually in charge of this country, or DC, and the military-industrial complex. And these people are behind a lot of the foreign policy. The Trilateral Commission is like corporations and the most powerful, corporate CEOs and stuff like that meeting together. It was their official reason they said they were formed was in order to make businesses from around the world work better. Big business from around the world work better together. But what it is ultimately is just one more organization that's pushing for the New World Order with some of the most powerful people on the planet. The Council of Foreign Relations is also just a massive foreign policy think tank that helps dictate some of the foreign policy maneuvers that we've seen over the years. David Rockefeller had a role in the 1973 coup against Salvador Allende in Chile, which led to the potential, the numbers around 60,000 people may have died at the hands of Pinochet, which he helped install. David Rockefeller, absolutely despicable, horrible person. And it was said that he might have been on, it was rumored, the source is kind of sketchy, but it was rumored that he was on potentially after they might have had 7 heart transplants. And I guess all those heart transplants were enough to keep him around any longer, as he was nearing his 102nd birthday. It was coming up on, I think, June something. But yeah, from many, many years of him being one of the most powerful, one of the people at the top, near the top of the New World Order pyramid. I mean, it's right there. Rockefellers and Rothschilds are probably the 2 most powerful families on the planet. And with these, and the fact is that David Rockefeller was, the last, he was the most powerful person of the Rockefeller family, you could say, or at least the most known at this point. Also to be mentioned, if you ever wondered why, back during the Nixon administration, I believe there was a guy named Nelson Rockefeller who was the vice president. Why there was a Rockefeller? It's because it was connected to it was like the Rockefellers, some of the people that actually are dictating what the president and vice president do he was actually there. Nelson Rockefeller, which is David Rockefeller's brother. David Rockefeller was the oldest of John Rockefeller, or was the oldest remaining Rockefeller, and he was the last of John Rockefeller's grandsons. John Rockefeller being, kind of like the, I guess he was the one that pretty much set the Rockefeller name, who I think if you adjust his wealth for inflation, his personal wealth was somewhere around like $800 billion or something like that. David Rock, and that was just by himself. It's like with the Rothschild family. We talk about of course, their wealth is much more than this one person, David Rockefeller. Rothschild's family wealth could be somewhere around $500 trillion, but there's many members of the family. Now, there's these people that try to say that the richest Rockefeller only has $2 billion or whatever, which is completely false, and they're kept off the Forbes list for a reason, much like the Rockefellers, I believe, have been underestimated their wealth while they try to make it seem like Bill Gates is the richest man on the planet with $90 billion or whatever. I can assure you that Jacob Rothschild's wealth is at least 50 times that amount. But without further ado, I should mention about the guest I have. My longtime producer is back after, what's that? June 5th was the last time we aired anything together, and Vince Easley is back tonight, and we're going to be talking about the Bundys. But I felt it was important to talk about David Rockefeller a bit, as the huge news that it is that he finally passed. Again, when you talk about people that are really in control of things, not Donald Trump, that's ultimately just a puppet, but when it comes to people that are at the top of this pyramid, David Rockefeller was pretty high up there, and that's why it was pretty big news of his passing. And it's great to see the scumbag finally leave this planet, and hopefully, I believe, that he is burning in hell right now. And he's joined the likes of Pinochet that he used to support, and also his grandfather, John Rockefeller, and many other horrible scumbags. But this man, David Rockefeller, who also pretty much boasted about the idea of the New World Order back in his memoirs a few years back. He talks about it in, 2002 or whatever. He has his memoirs where he writes about the New World Order or whatnot, and he's not ashamed of it. He seems to be proud. That's the level of wickedness this man belonged to. But anyways, Vince Easley is here. And apparently Vince was just on, but I lost him. Vince, are you in the studio right now? I think he has to join the call because I'm not getting anything back and it says not on the call. Okay, well, I have to get that figured out though. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Bundys tonight, and we're going to be talking about the current situation of them. It's been over a year since this happened, since the incident, about 14 months. And Eamon Bundy, Ryan Bundy. Ryan Bundy was, I think, one of the ones that was injured. There was only two people, I think, that got shot during the entire incident, and it was Ryan Bundy and my boy Finicum, as we know, was killed. The Bundy standoff happened last January, and then before that, there was also a standoff that happened in Nevada, where the Bundys were involved in Bunkerville, which that was back in that was like April 2014. So that's almost been 3 years since that incident happened. So the Bundys have been now like a known name for 3 years, and throughout the time of the Bundys being known, here at Voice of Rebellion, we've always stood by him, and rejected about the Bundys.
I believe we're in now, right?
Oh, I can hear you, Vince.
Great. Okay, hey Chris, good to be with you tonight.
Hey, I think you turned up I can hear you, but your audio is coming in a little weak. Or something.
let me try a little closer. Is that any better?
Yeah, it's coming in better now. I can hear you good. Yeah. So, yeah, I was talking about just a little bit of a overview of the whole Bundy situation in general. Talk about how there was the one standoff back in 2014. That's almost been 3 years, believe it or not, since Bunkerville incident back in April 2014. Now the Burns one was about 14 months ago, and I think the arrest where now these people have been sitting in jail since last February, so that's a little over 13 months since these people have been were put in jail, and now they're facing some pretty shitty conditions with the judicial system, and you have apparently I have kind of a loose grasp on what's going on currently, but what appears is that they're just they're on trumped up charges, and at the same time they're not really getting any kind of fair representation or whatever. And the judge seems to be doing whatever she can to slam these people over there in Oregon rights where they're doing the trial. What I want to ask about, I guess one question I want to ask is, what do you know about what's going on with the Bundy family as of now?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it's pretty rough for all those family members out there. They got pretty big families, so there's going to be people pitching in. But with a lot of the dads gone, and the women folk are pretty sad. It's just got to be hard. And these guys have been held without bail. You got to think why. They went to publicly make a stand. Where do you get when you want to take a stand when the government's doing you wrong, or anybody, and you say, look, this ain't right, and you try to address them in proper channels, and in frustration, as Hal was talking about, where does the first lead to the second? If people have to come from all over the country because they feel like there's a great injustice being done to some folks, and then that carries on to let's stand more against injustice, because there's quite a bit of dirty deeds going on by folks that occupy seats of decision within the government. There's wrong action taken, and I think perhaps wrong advice. But I would say certainly that a lot of the situations that were created that have these people in jail were orchestrated by infiltrators, by that people from within these agencies that are supposed to be there to serve the people. They come in and create the crime. And it is hard to believe. 3 years, and I see Dodie in chat. Everybody, hello here in chat. Dodie came out, and she, like I, wanted to go and see firsthand what was going on. So she and I did give an account as well. And I spent some time out there. I got to know the folks. I lived in that area. Worked just north of Bunkerville, Mesquite, early in life, and lived down even earlier in life. Went to school in Moapa Valley. So it's a region that I've lived in different parts of life, and know the folks around there. Really good people, and they've been demonized and ostracized, whether you believe in their religion or whatever aside. They're good moral people, and they represent the folks of America's past, really, with the moral values and so forth. And family, family value, obviously, big families. And I think with them being in jail, this jurisdiction, they're fighting it. And as I was talking about today as well, I'd have to go back and really give a good account, look at my notes. But so much of how we address this wrong. We're busy being the wallow wounded and crying about those that are being against us, instead of going in the more proper way, in the more proper fashion, and addressing them where their wrong exists. Frumpy and Real Liberty Media today said, if you're going to choose to engage within the system, then you've lost. But, whether you, no matter how you define the word anarchist, it's, I think it's important to say that at least you've got to start somewhere, and you can't start anywhere except for where we're at. And I met a girl on the Appalachian Trail here a few days ago hiking. A lot of young folks, there's old folks hiking. It's really fantastic, some of the people that you meet. And those on the trail seem to be of a little higher character in so many ways. People that are going to walk for, 2,000 something miles, got to have some kind of moral fiber. So anyways, this girl, she's going to be a lawyer in property and, intellectual property and patent rights and so forth like this. And I said, oh, boo, boo. And so I did have a chance, just to engage her lightly, and talk about the Bar Association. And this is where we find so many people come from in these seats of decision that are in this, and they're generals and so forth in the army against us. It's been taken over so long ago, and how else can we do what? We can't abandon it, and we can't just decree anarchy, and we don't have to abide by those rules, because we see, even when we try to abide by the rules, they're going to come for you. If your head's poking up, they're going to whack it, right?
Yeah. Right now, this, it's like you said, it's been so long since this all went down. I'm talking about, like, earlier, 15 minutes ago, I was talking about John Rockefeller or whatever. Really, it was, talk about, like, the industrialists of the 1800s were the ones that founded or helped foundate the Federal Reserve, with, of course, the longtime bankers such as the Rothschilds that were at the forefront of the creation of the Federal Reserve and are still in charge of the Federal Reserve ultimately. So it's been so long, but there's any kind of resistance you see is smashed, no matter what level it is. You even have had generals or whatever. That's what I believe happened under the Obama administration, is that there was a purge of any general that wasn't willing to take drastic actions against American citizens. Talk about killing American citizens that speak up or anything. What seems to be in the plans, and people right now believe that Trump is actually part of some kind of resistance to the people at the top. They think Trump is, and it's starting to get more and more comical in a way to think that Trump is any part of some kind of internal resistance, and that Trump's smashing the establishment. When you see right now is that Trump's trying to repass Obamacare. It's a different name practically. It may potentially have made it even worse than it was than the original Obamacare was with this new Trump care. You see Trump's stance towards Russia. Apparently it was supposed to be this massive reconciliation with Russia or whatever, but then he says, "Oh yeah, you guys need to give back Crimea," which has been one of the major agitations. Has been Crimea and Ukraine towards Russia in the last few years, and it seems like Trump's just continuing that.
Certainly, it's a lot of positioning, and I believe most of it is just to perpetrate the fraud of this so-called fair governance that is coming upon the scene more and more. It's more of control, and it's not going to be good. They're pushing for war, and what we really need is more war, right? That's always seems to be the solution. But on Rockefeller, what was the date he died on? Wasn't that some like special date for rituals and all that? I think they probably put him in cryogenics at 101 years old, and he's waiting for his resurrection. So the world may not see the last of the Rockefeller.
If it would have been a special date if he would have died on the 22nd, but he died on the 20th. I'm not sure if that's the day, but I know the 22nd would have been a special day because 322, which just means something to the skull and bones.
Yeah, that's right. It was a skull and bones thing or something. I don't remember, but
that's the one that George W. Bush and John Kerry were both part of, and actually there was like some or something brought that up in an interview or so about to one of them. Is that isn't it weird that these opposing candidates are both belong to the same secret society at Yale, and then they kind of just apparently he kind of just got shut down on that or whatever. They really didn't go any further with that, from my understanding. That was the 2004 election when that happened. Again, we start bringing up these names, these societies. These are the people. These are where the ones that ultimately control a lot of, or all the people that do control are out of these societies. The Skull and Bones, the Freemasons or whatnot, they're high-level Masons.
Well, absolutely. There's certainly many organizations that people in high powers gravitate to and hide themselves within, for that matter, as well. And it's this so-called government. It's most people don't see that it's not. It's rogue. It's not for the people, and it hasn't been for so long, for a long time. They're obviously these lobbyists and insiders and all that. It's all set up. It's run as a corporation. It is a corporation. It's run for profit, and it's a rigged game. It's a Ponzi scheme, but the Federal Reserve is the money supply. So much of it is it's a no-win, and people then have a great hope in Trump, just like they've done other folks and all the people that love Reagan. If they if they really looked at how he inflated all that money and from into the millions and billions, and then what Obama to the trillions, it's just phenomenal that this carries on. So of course we have to add more to the supply, and what better way than war? I mean, we can only bomb sand, and brick houses in the desert for so long. I mean, we're going to have to get some bigger targets, right? I mean, we've decimated so many countries over there, knocked out their power and their sewer and their water, kill families full of people to supposedly take out one person. What kind of evils do we represent? And so we're going to have to pit it up against Russia, the other bad guy, or China. Everybody's posturing, and we really miss it.
I mean, right now, it's crazy because you have Steve Bannon or whatever, the guy that's is like chief strategist that's saying that the war with China is inevitable or whatever. It's just pretty scary that this is the kind of rhetoric that's being pushed around some of the people in the inside circle of Trump. I really think that in many ways Trump is going to be maybe an even bigger ruse to the American people than Obama was, because I think that a lot of people, just like Obama, believed that he was going to bring a lot of change to the system. And on the surface, it kind of made sense, is that, okay, Trump, being from outside of politics, made that he'll be different. He'll be able to make, he's made a bunch of risky deals or whatever in real estate, so maybe he has the balls to do something against the elites, even though that's not really how it works, because it's a whole different ball game between real estate business and, dealing with the Rothschilds and Rockefellers or whatever. There's no negotiating with these people. The only way is you either follow them, or you have to actively be against them, and they'll try to kill you. They'll try to do many things against you. They might try to blackmail you. There's so many tactics that they try. It's like with JFK, they ultimately ended up taking him out. If Trump was actually against the system, I think that he would already have died of a heart attack or something at this point, which would have really been a poisoning. And everybody would have just said whatever, because the dude's 70 years old, and we see Trump and doesn't appear to be in the best health. I don't think too many people would have questioned, maybe some people, but I think a lot of Americans would have been, oh, yeah, it's whatever. Anyways. And then Mike Pence would have became the vice president or whatever, which Mike Pence is practically like a new Dick Cheney practice. And it's like you got this wild goofball type character as the president, and then you have the reserve establishment, normal politician as your vice president, similar to the Bush-Cheney effect is what I see in the Trump-Pence effect. And on like you said, is that the Middle East, they only can keep bombing small targets so long. And I think what I believe is that Iraq and Afghanistan are just practically like training grounds for the big war with Iran, which they've been planning for a long time. And Syria at the same time would probably be both some countries at once. They've already kind of creeped into Syria in the ruse of fighting ISIS, but in the reality, they've been fighting Assad's military. There was that incident where they killed 106 of his troops in one attack. And they said it was an accident. It was bad intel or whatever led to the attack on September 17th. And it was like in the one city where out in eastern Syria that was still controlled by the Syrian government. They ended up, they said they were fighting the United States military was trying to fight ISIS, and they accidentally killed 106 Syrian troops. So they denied it was that many. They said, it was only like 60 something or whatever. Yeah. Going back to the Bundys, however, and going back to the domestic front, is that we see more and more of these incidents with law enforcement as it goes on. And it's weird to see this divide is one of the main things that people, you start talking about the Bundys, or you start talking about maybe the incidents of black youth or whatever, black men being shot by police, and automatically people categorize you into two different groups. They either say that you're one of those Black Lives Matter, black nationalist or something like that, folk, and if you start talking about one and you talk about the Bundys, you must be one of those racist patriots or whatever, is what people start saying.
I got to tell you, I've met some really great people out there, some awesome people, just regular people that came out there and wanted to see for themselves. Others that came and said, you know what, we're going to stand here in the middle. We're going to stand in the gap. And, we want a redress of governments, in other words. And when it comes time when people show up with guns like that, to say, look, we're exercising this Second Amendment. That's just what it was created for. We're not shooting. Now, to that effect, Jason Patrick, who was rearrested, he was out up there in Oregon, and he got convicted on the conspiracy. So there's 2 on conspiracy and 2 didn't get it out of 4 in the second trial. Anyway, so he's rearrested. Jason's a great guy. He and I were talking on the 12th in 2014. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. We're standing outside this the trailer up there on what I call the Marshall grounds, where everybody gathers and to eat and all that. And the trailer was set there for a stage for public announcements and for meeting, like with Sheriff Gillespie when he came later that day. So Ammon Bundy come out after we'd been out there talking for a while. And he said, I've been listening to you guys, and he and I, Jason, that is, and I both representing media, as small as that was, as small a voice as mine is, Pete Santilli, who's got, lots of views, he's in jail. So as media, no matter what you think about Pete, he was out there, and now wham. It's pretty scary what we're looking at, when they're going to just start arresting people because they say, look, we don't like what you're doing. Hal was talking about this. Again, Hal Anthony, Behind the Woodshed, right here on Sunday afternoons on UCY from Real Liberty Media. Really appreciate what Hal does. Looking back, at this time, just really paying close attention to Hal. This been giving me the chance to learn a lot, and going back and review over the years of what Hal's had to say, and specifics from the Sugar Pine Mine to the Bundy Ranch to the Oregon up there in the Malheur Refuge and so forth. I found it to be spot on. Too bad people just won't listen. Now, somebody else in jail, Tom Lacavara Stewart, another great guy. He gave me access to his motorhome. I was up there to do some interviews and kick back and chill. There was a lot of. Go ahead.
That was the last show we did together. Viewed him. Remember, that was on June 5th. We did that show.
Awesome. Yeah. So and Patty Beers, PM Beers, she's what you'd call the left. If you want to put these quotes in there, right? The left leaning, the bleeding heart liberal, whatever. You got all these tags and all this stuff. And Tom being, the right wing Christian, whatever. Okay, we'll just throw them out there just for an example. But also, I did some radio with them together also, and I was able to walk us down a path where we were seeing things in the same light. Hal Anthony, Behind the Woodshed, is a pathfinder too, in so many ways, and how we need to approach. Again, not be the walking wounded or the wailing wounded and flailing about and crying, "Oh, poor me," ignoring the whole time and walking the primrose path and all the time, walking to your self-destruction. So we have a responsibility to search that better path, and when we can come together and see that commonality and forget the differences that is portrayed, wherein we're all still in the same plantation in this big old pod that we live in, the police state, battlefield America. So we got to go against that which is wrong, make a right out of it. or bring the right to the wrong, or bring it right to it. So many people there are in jail, been denied a bail even. Not to mention the other torture, and it's nothing but torture. You get put in a room, a cement room. They take your blankets. They may even be stripping them down naked in the daytime, or just leaving them in their boxers. But they've been putting these guys in solitary confinement back and forth because they want to protest, or they want to exert their rights, and proven guilty or innocent until proven guilty. How do they hold these peaceful people? None of them bore arms, matter of fact, and I stand witness. They ain't called me to the stand, but I did. I was there. I stood as witness, and I seen people that came in to look to cause trouble. So Ammon and I and Jason Patrick, as I said, he came out. Ammon did, and he says, "Well, you guys, you're not like the media trying to get here and get something, because we're talking about we need to be on the watch for anybody that would be ready to act in violence or to cause some problems, because we know that there will be people sent in to do that, and maybe even a nut job. Look at those whacks. They were camped. The killers that killed the cops there in Vegas, they were camped within about 30 feet of me. They were expelled. We caught people like that. So they were back in Vegas for quite some time. No telling what kind of who and what was going on. There's a lot to that, money being given to them, and that's another story I've talked about in the past too. But so much happens in something like this, and then we look at similar things that go completely different, supposedly by the social justice warriors. No DAPL. People want to take a stand on their emotions and on their opinion instead of what is right and obvious, and there are certain things that have to be done in certain ways to address it, and without doing so, then there's, forget about communication. There's nothing going to be done or fixed about it. So looking for that better way, right?
Yeah. Like you were talking about, the paid provocateurs that we've seen in different movements are definitely it's definitely a real thing, and that it's really what it's done is it's gave ammo to both sides in order to the people that want to split up the main activist movement in the United States. And what it seems to have done is that there's this major split that's been created by the media and whatnot, and even the alternative media, your more mainstream alternative media, like the Young Turks, I guess you could say, on one side of the coin, and then people like InfoWars, and they cause this divide between your patriots, if you want to give them a label or whatever, the patriot, right wing side of the activist movement that oppose the government, Bundy supporters or whatnot, and then maybe you're like more left wing, Black Lives Matter, and it also now there seems to be a split off too now with this whole I don't really call these people the activists, more or less these people that are the some of them are true activists, but a lot of them are people following a trend, which is the anti-Trump movement. These anti-Trump protests that have gotten huge, and what we see is a lot of these social justice warrior types or whatever. I don't really even feel like calling them real activists at this point. It's like almost like calling the alt-right real activists. These people are following a trend, more or less, that they think is cool. In order, it's like, hating Trump or whatever is the trendy thing on Tumblr or whatever, and then alt-right is that loving Trump and putting racist cartoons with frogs in it is cool because I saw this stuff on 4chan or whatever. But in the end, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't fix anything, But then there's some people, I would say, like the people, of course, the Patriot movement, they seem to actually be concerned with change. And a lot of the people, believe it or not, from of course there's exceptions, and some of them kind of bleed over to the more. It's because it's the mainstream thing. The Black Lives Matter crowd, however, has a lot of legitimate activists in it. I don't know about the leaders of it. I see more and more when they do acts that are ridiculous, it seems to be that their leaders are corrupt. You've had people like Jesse Jackson or whatever over the years that pretend to care about the average black folk or whatever, but really were pocketing millions of dollars. And, but when he arrived in Ferguson, Missouri, they told him to get the hell out of there. So those people that told him to get the hell out of there knew better and knew that there's these type of people. They want a legitimate justice. They don't want these paid shills or whatever. They're just there to, pocket some money and like they care about a cause. And that's what unfortunately has, emerged in some of these different activist situations, is that you have people like Jesse Jackson for black civil rights or whatever, and then you have on the I guess you could say there's even this people. I would say it's over on the Patriot side or whatever. I would say it's more like people like Alex Jones and Glenn Beck. Really Glenn Beck over the years. Who push all this stuff, but at the same time, don't address one of the major people that's disrupting, one of the biggest threats to America. They always talk about these threats to America, and they always, they do exactly what the establishment wants to do, which is create fear of Muslims, which, people like Glenn Beck have done, make it seem like Sharia law is lurking around the corner, but at the same time, be friendly to Israel and make Israel seem like this is beacon of peace in the Middle East, and then we can never abandon Israel or whatnot. And it goes right into their push to spread Islamophobia, and it makes it just, and what it does when they spread this Islamophobia, it justifies all those millions of people killed in the Middle East because they're Muslims. They believe, well, it's not so bad because they were Muslims. It dehumanizes the very inhuman actions that the United States military machine is doing in the Middle East, and it's also now, it's starting. I think it's not too far away. We're going to see some very bad things start to happen from some of the more marginalized groups in this country here. I mean, it's already happened with the homeless, that we hear reports that homeless people are being taken to these FEMA camps are already active, and I've seen stuff that says that homeless people are like getting options where they can go to jail or go to these places or whatnot. So it's probably already being utilized in small amounts, and that was a pretty old story. That was like 4 years ago. They were talking about that, and right now, not long ago, Trump was talking about using the military to go into Chicago. He says if Chicago doesn't get their shit straightened out, I'm going to send in the military or whatever. It's bad what's happened in Chicago, and of course the police and all their city officials or whatever, they're heavily corrupt, and they've contributed to the massive problem there, and the government's contributed to the massive problem there. But martial law and condoning martial law and making it seem like it's normal is one more step further along the downward spiral that this country has taken in general. And with the Bundys, what we saw was practically a utilization of martial law by these heavily armed federal troops, stopping, shooting, one of these guys that eventually killed Lavoy Finicum, and then lying. From what the evidence we've seen is that they lied about what Lavoy Finicum did. That they said that Lavoy Finicum was a threat, and that he was reaching for a gun that he never had. It looked to be a planted gun, and it was one that he had never owned, which is a common.
Hold on to that though. He did own a 9mm, and I have secondhand confirmation to that. But the pocket on a denim jacket, and I have one just like it, and I've renamed the Levi denim to Finicum in his honor, Lavoy Finicum. In 2011, I camped out in this Arizona Strip there between St. George, Utah, along the Virgin River, in that way there, in between there and Mesquite, which is just north of Bunkerville. And it happened to be on Lavoy's land where he run cattle. Their BLM land called that. It's supposed to be public land. The Bureau of Land Management is supposed to manage land. Well, they've managed about every rancher there right on out of business. And Cliven Bundy being the last, he stood up. Now they claimed tortoises was the issue. The cows was detrimental to tortoises. There's a study over 300 years of cattle, and I'll roll down here and I'll get it and I'll just drop it in the. I know we got a lot of folks over from Real Liberty Media listening, some here in the UCY.TV chat room. But on these tortoises, and they were actually benefited by the cattle. And in the times that were most overgrazed, back in the free-for-all days, before people said, well, yeah, we can't just let everything get ate up, and there won't be nothing left next year, right? So people will tend to level out after that time in history where everybody was there for the land grab or whatever, however you see that point. But the tortoises thrive, okay? So they went in, and the government, when I say they, and went in and rounded up all these tortoises actually, desert tortoise, and ended up having to kill them because I don't know why they even gathered them to start with. But tortoises do benefit from cattle. They eat the browse back, and the new growth gives more available browse for other animals, including the tortoise. The tortoise also eats the cow patties plopped down. If I guess it's like a delicacy. Some people in Africa, I think, eat that too. I've seen on documentary once. So, it's a survival food. As gross as it sounds, you can eat it yourself in a survival situation, and you can digest what that cow didn't. That you could digest what he started with. But anyways, there's a little trivia on the tortoise and the cow. We'll see who wins that one. I'll guarantee you there'll be a loser if the cow loses, the tortoise loses, right? So they're moving they want to move people off the land. There's all these, Agenda 21 or 2030 and all this debate on global warming or climate change and so forth. It's all just to bring this so-called stockholders a position, and then they get shot from behind the stalking horse over here because it's just a false front. Most of what we perceive that is being presented in the news and as how it presents it is noticed. And we see, if you look close enough, you can see what the agenda is and how people are being played and manipulated. And that's the trick right there, is to not be tricked, right? See how the flow is. And who was it? Thomas Jefferson said something about, like, in a matter of fashion, go with the flow, the stream, but in a matter of character, stand like a rock. So that's what it boils down to. Is and character is then that what government should be proper, and that is to protect the individual, and that individual is part of the group. So I mean, there's certain aspects where we are, as in a sense, one or a community, and that's where law comes in. And law is settlement, and it is peace. So they want to present the Bundys and those that join them as lawless or as outlaws. Well, out legal perhaps, because they were out legaled in the legal system. And I heard a judge myself say that he didn't care for justice, but for the letter of the law. So again, back to the Bar Association. And many listeners now will know plenty about that. And if you don't, just see what your search engine will bring you, or tune into Hal Anthony on Sundays and Thursday night replay right here on UCY. So I think you'll learn a little bit along the way, some lessons from behind the woodshed. I appreciate Hal and all he does. We all got a lot to learn, and we have the responsibility to ourselves and each other. And if we're going to be called a community of people, there's not much room, when it's all said and done. This earth is not so big after all, or it is a small world. So paraphrase.
Now the question became, is it a flat world?
Yeah. Hey, Joe. I see you there.
But which I believe, in my personal opinion, that whole flat world stuff is probably some kind of psyop, probably started by some trolls on the internet in order to make us all look crazy or whatever. Because honestly, that's common sense. from what I think.
Well, there's nothing wrong with taking a look
Nothing-
at everything that we presuppose because if we're going to really be truly open-minded, we need to look at every bit of it. But when you boil it all down, it's probably NASA's been cheating public for a very long time in what they've said they've done and gone to space. So I would think it's probably more fraud and cover-up and distraction.
Well, yeah, it keeps people away from the more important issues that are going on right now. Like, there's so many right now. 2017, we've already had, pushing, the point of war over there in North Korea, over in Iran. The tensions have been reheated. Russia's already, the supposed friendship between Putin and Trump's already cooling off. It's definitely it's definitely changing. And we're definitely this is probably a pretty pivotal year. I think that 2017 we're going to see by the end of the year, the United States make some kind of major move in the Middle East. And, and what makes me say that 2017 is a pivotal year because it's the last year of the window that Netanyahu said that there'd be a massive attack on New York. Remember, back in 2013, he predicted pretty much that there'd be an attack on New York in 3 to 4 years. So we're now the 3 years has already been X'd off because it's been 2013. We're now on to the 4th year. So it's 2017 we're talking about. So, and just remember that Netanyahu was also, he's been pushing the idea of war with Iran for the last 25, 26 years now. Since the early 90s, he's been talking about that Iran 6 months away from the nuclear weapon. It's also similar to how Cheney predicted also would happen later. He said, or I don't know if he predicted, he gave a timetable, but he predicted that there was a terror attack nearing or whatever back in the spring of 2001. And then we had 9/11 happen that year, which massively changed the United States and, Western countries such as the United Kingdom, France. Well, France at first wasn't part of the whole move towards the Middle East, but, the UK and few other Western countries, Canada joined in into the push into Iraq, Afghanistan, and now I can see them making the push towards Syria and Iran, the two bigger targets that do not have a Rothschild bank. Let's keep that in mind. Also, before people say anything about North Korea or whatever, just remember that they don't have a Rothschild bank either. They don't give a shit about any supposed human rights abuses, which I can imagine they're probably heavily fabricated. I mean, we've had there was that story before where the defector ended up admitting that what he said was a lie, and where I know he at least changed the story, where there was and there's only been a handful of these guys, so it's hard to say what really goes on inside the country. But I can imagine that it's probably different than what your news is telling you. When it comes to human rights, our country does not give a shit about human rights. I mean, they support Saudi Arabia, they support Bahrain, they support some of the most tyrannical countries on the face of the planet. I mean, we also just remember what goes on in another Middle Eastern country that starts with an I, Israel, that they practice Jim Crow segregation. And it's funny that people, you have, you have the government or whatever pretty much claiming that, the people from the Bundys or whatever are racist and these different dissidents, belong to some kind of far right racist conspiracy inside the country or whatever. This seems to be kind of a thing they like to lump people towards nowadays. The media really has been lumping, that if you oppose their narrative, you must be some kind of far right Nazi or whatever. When they support the United States government, the media, they support Israel, who actually has Jim Crow segregation, and they also support West Ukraine. That actually is the far right. It seems like all of a sudden our government gives a shit about the far right or whatever is what they're acting like when they were cozy to Pinochet, a fascist. They were cozy to Marcos. They were cozy to a guy that literally was, supposedly was neutral in World War II, but in reality he was allied with Hitler, Francisco Franco, Salazar. How many more of these far right fascist dictators do I need to name to break open this argument that the United States government actually cares about supposedly if Trump is some kind of fascist or whatever? That's the media. They're trying to act like they're some kind of resistance. And what I think it is all part of a divide and conquer, is to split people up into two different groups, which is the Trump supporters versus the Trump haters. That's what Trump's main agenda has been. It's kind of continuation that Obama did as well, is the massive division inside this country. That Obama also, between his supporters and the people that were against him, were so far apart. But now Trump might be even driving them even further apart. Those two, the so-called right and left in this country. When in reality, the Democrats and the Republicans are both part of the far right. They're both corporatists. They're both very similar. If compared to what these politicians said between Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels, a lot of our government officials say things that are very similar to those guys. I think there was one quote. There was one quote by Hillary Clinton or whatever, which was very similar to a Hitler quote about that the needs of society are above the needs of an individual or whatever. And Hitler said something pretty similar. And what the sentiment is that the needs of the state, that the government squashes the individual. And that sentiment goes the same between these politicians, Clinton, Trump, Bush, all of them, and Hitler and Mussolini and, known fascists before. But the difference is that nowadays, fascism has a dirty name. So they're going to, hide it in different terms or whatever. It's made the neoliberal seems to kind of really now just mean fascist. Corporatist they might use. They'll never say, they'll never probably admit that they are a fascist themselves, and they'll pretend to be against it. And what they'll do a lot of is try to point their finger at other people and try to say, oh yeah, we're not the ones that are like Hitler. Really, that's Vladimir Putin or whatever. When it's at least over there, they actually have an actual democracy with different parties that are actually different. If you look at their elections or whatever, and they're trying to say now the narrative of hacking elections or whatnot. And going back to how it relates to what we're talking about or whatnot, it's that media has been a massive part of this demonization of the Bundys. From the whole time they've tried to paint them out as many different things. CNN, Fox, maybe to a lesser degree, they still even did. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, they all paint them out to be, as pretty much anywhere from, a bunch of rowdy rednecks to, domestic terrorists. And that seems to be what they really I think the term they've used a few times is that they try to make it seem like these people are domestic terrorists. And that's not the case. These people are using their Second Amendment for what it's supposed to be for, using their First Amendment for what it's supposed to be for. If it's no longer allowed, which seems to be the sentiment in this country that's growing, that if you can no longer protest, and if you can if you can't if you can't protest with arms to protect yourself, and also it's to make a point. But really, one of the main things that you have to remember is that the government will kill unarmed protesters, but maybe they'll be a little bit more hesitant to pull the trigger when those people are exercising their Second Amendment, because they know that it might equal to their demise. Kent State, you had 4 people were killed, 4 students were killed back, and they were all unarmed. You've had many incidents where across the world where unarmed protesters have been killed, but I bet you'd be able to find less incidents where there was armed protesters that were shot and killed. That's all I have to say about that. But, I'm going to ask a little bit.
Go ahead.
Ask a little bit of a question here. Have you talked to any of the Bundy family members, any bit more recent? You're talking about more like about 2014 or whatnot, but I know you care
only on social media, just the interaction there. Matter of fact, coincidentally, a friend of mine from there that's living elsewhere, I hadn't seen anything from him. I mean, I stayed with him out in Vegas a little while. We kind of communed and interacted together and become a good friend. So anyways, I seen him back today on social media, so it was good to see him. Dodie is here in chat, and you see why. She and I, we went together out there. I'd been out there, and then we met back up, and so we went and took a look and talked to some folks. I for myself, I saw some people that were there to for their own agenda and to cause dissent. For me, I easily identified. But there was so many people that showed up are good Americans, and I use that term to, in all its great glory, what America is supposed to stand for. Not these United States, this corporate governance, and these scumbags that are, I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican, like you stated so eloquently, they're all part of that corporate welfare state, and Trump is no different than Hillary or Bernie. I don't care if you tag it as socialism or whatever, any of the isms you like to put there. The fact is again, as Hal said today, mob rule is chaos, but law is peace. And that is what the Bundy sought, and those people that came there in support. They wanted peace and they wanted resolution. They called the sheriff to come out. Gillespie, I guess, told the feds to go home, and Dan Love, he's been implemented in all types of corruption. They won't even. I'll pop over here in just a second. I have a tab open. So this is what we're up against. Let me come over here. This guy right here is representing himself in trial right now in Vegas. Just sit there. I'm waiting for the tab to refresh. So, Judge Navarro, the judge here in the case, she says defendants have 3 rights. That is to plead guilty, testify on his own behalf, and appeal his conviction. Now, his lawyer was not at all acting to his satisfaction, and he said, looky here, I want to represent myself. Well, he was getting punished here for, I guess, being the state objected, like, if I can find it here, a whole bunch of times anyways. And then he did something that broke the rules of the Bar Association by asking, is it true that Special Agent in charge Dan Love is under criminal investigation? Now, the prosecution blew a gasket, and all four prosecutors, and this man, okay, I see what I did. Sorry about the beep. So, 4 prosecutors, this guy's trying to represent himself, right? He's already shackled, both literally and figuratively, to try to represent himself with all these legalities and this Bar Association rules, where the judge, the prosecutor, even if you got a public defender, even down to the bail bondsman, all work for the state. So where's the fair trial in that? And as we do know, judges are not interested in justice, but only in the letter of the law. Okay, so after being 50 questions and objections 50 times, it comes from the prosecution, Todd did not allow himself to get flustered. Towards the end of the questioning, Engel asks, is it true that if this guy, so yeah, then they blew a gasket. All 4 prosecutors stood up yelling objections. They claimed that Engel violated of rules that prohibit the defense from discussing the criminal investigation of Love. And all this was stated in front of the jury. Now, of course, all this hee-haw going on, and the judge probably saying, hey, you got to disregard that. But so she's all like, look, you're no longer allowed to talk. In her court where you're not allowed to represent yourself, she appointed him another lawyer. And this guy is like, whatever. He's not even, doing his job for this guy, or supposedly he's an attorney, obviously not a lawyer, not one that stands for law, at least. And this is the whole debacle. This whole system of governments, and not even, and as I said earlier about what Hal's talking about, the proper jurisdiction. These, man, it's terrible. And what do? Nobody can even have a consensus on which direction to go. So certainly difficult. And what can we do more to, further stand against the tyranny? And if people don't see that we're living in a war zone right here in America, and it's going to get worse. You bomb people's countries and then brings them over let them come as refugees. And then that's the controversy then, because, of course, some of those people planted or perhaps coerced after, atrocities become terrorists here in this land, like it's going to, like in London, like it's going to happen more and more in Europe. It's going to happen here. You got to blend it. We can't just keep blowing up countries everywhere. We can make little small conflicts inside the country here. More security, less freedom. So that's just the order of the day. You can't have people standing up and saying no, and especially if they got a gun in their hand.
Yeah. And like say what's going on right now, that's why I think that part of what we're seeing right now in Europe, recently we've had so many attacks, small little attacks here and there, and it's definitely pushed towards total lockdown in some of these countries. I really hope that France will finally trash their old governments when it comes to the elections, and that the elections aren't interfered with. I mean, it's probably a lot to ask for, but because it's probably in a major country like that, I don't think that the powers that be are going to probably let somebody from outside the establishment win. But I've been kind of following up with their elections over there, and France has had major false flags lately, and all across Europe we've had all these attacks. Little attack here. There was, it seems like another market gets. A truck gets rammed through or whatever in our market, mowing down a bunch of people, or there's a stabbing attack in England or whatnot. Obviously, it's pretty alarming to see from on the other side of the pond. And I think that major controversy with the whole refugee thing, it shouldn't be about letting these people in. It should be that that the government's created these refugees. That in Iraq, how many refugees were created by the all-out bombing that they did in 2003 and on. How many refugees have been created by Syria and by financing these rebels and, starting this proxy war. How many people, have been affected by the bombings in the Middle East. Some people have been removed from their countries multiple times, like in Syria. A lot of those people were already refugees from Iraq, and they were let in by Bashar al-Assad at an earlier time, and then they got bombed out of their houses, and they had to go to other countries, and then I can imagine there's probably been, double, triple removed refugees that are now coming to Europe or whatever, trying to look for a place to finally settle. But now you see that I can imagine, that's probably not a smart idea for the tricky situation, because some of these people definitely probably have problems, psychological problems, from just seeing these horrors that they've witnessed. These people that had, in their short lives, some of these people are sometimes just teenagers and stuff that are coming up to Europe, have already seen just the entire lives inflicted by war, afflicted by also all these things associated with war, which is famine. People that, a lot of times these people went weeks without eating, whatever country. One of the things that the United States government did in their involvement with Syria was they were bombing warehouses, and I think, and also apparently other infrastructure. So a lot of people's daily lives and all that stuff, like getting their food, was interfered with. Getting where infrastructure, so oil. During the winter, I believe it does get pretty cold in Syria, and so a lot of people had very cold nights, didn't sleep for weeks on end because there were days on end because they were too cold. People, I mean, I'm pretty sure that it's just every aspect of their lives were changed. But and it goes back to this country, then we have the incidents here, whatever, that justify the wars and also justifies the locking down this country, and it makes that any kind of dissent will no longer be allowed, and slowly goes down the path of Germany in the 30s, that that protests become unacceptable. Any kind of complaining about the current situation or complaining about the government becomes no longer allowed. In 1933, just about all politicians, or all kinds, anybody that, most politicians and activists that were from any party that wasn't consolidated into the Nazi Party were arrested or were completely kicked out of politics. And the only people that were not actually, believe it or not, and you can look it up, the only political body that I know of that was still open or still functioning as of after 1933, besides the Nazi Party, was the Zionist Federation in Germany, which they worked together on the Havar Agreement in 1933, which transferred Jews to Palestine. And there's actually like a coin of it that shows the Havar Agreement. But you can see that all the other parties, however, were shut down pretty much. And here, political thought, it seems like now it's almost become like Orwellian, the thought police, is that, thought of, militia or whatever, or, just talk about, having armed protests or whatever is now unacceptable, but nevertheless doing, it's like, I feel like if I was to talk about the idea of armed protests besides my radio show and go talk about somewhere else, I would be ridiculed heavily. And, potentially they would deem me as a misfit or whatever, or somebody that's definitely violent. They would probably say that if I was to talk about this as just, some average person, they would think you're crazy. Talk about the ideas of militias or whatever, even though this is what our founding fathers talked about in the Constitution, and this is how our country we gain our independence that way from the British, from a tyrannical government. But now if we talk about this, or at least we used to, now it seems like they're waiting out a lot of the stuff about the founding fathers because it goes against the narrative that they want to push. But is that one of the main things about the founding fathers and the independence in 1776 is that they didn't politely ask the British for independence. They didn't make a petition on the internet, even though we're talking, or make a petition on a scroll and send it to London asking for their independence. No, they fucking shot the people that stopped them, or were trying to stop them from getting independence. They picked up arms and they shot the British that were there to oppose their draconian laws on them. And also remember, this is a lot of the War of Independence they fought over was over a lot less than what Americans are tolerating today. I mean, it was a 3% tax on that they ultimately pretty much triggered the war. We had just a few taxes on stamps, tea, and a few other things was enough for the colonists to decide enough was enough. And also a few incidents. And the Boston Massacre was 5 people were killed. We've had multiple incidents where dissidents have been killed. Kent State, 4 people were killed in just that one incident. And we've also had, Lavoy Finicum. We have over the years, other protests or stuff's happened. Sure, I can't really think of any examples right now, but I'm sure they exist. And also other examples where the wall in general has, has killed someone unjustly. We've had we've had what happened in Ferguson. We had what happened up in Baltimore. We've had also many other ones, like Thomas. Of all races, it seems like have been affected by the militarized police. It's definitely a different law enforcement. That's part of the big question that people should be asking is why the hell are the police treating us like like people that live in a war zone or whatever, like military and walking down the zone in Afghanistan or something. How American citizens are being treated, and we're being treated by our police like they are military. They have vehicles like they're military, and they're actually being trained by a foreign government. Sometimes the Israeli military has been training some of our police departments. I believe they even trained the St. Louis Police Department. That should be another major question. Why the hell is a foreign government training our police to enforce our citizens? And I think I know the answers, because probably when it comes to policing and how to effectively shut down and marginalize a population, an entire population, they've done. The Palestinian population, they've done it. So they're transferring those tactics over to our police, to our armed agencies.
Sure, you send a bunch of young men over there, and you have to live that day and day, and then you come back, and a lot of these guys are going into to the police And I mean, it's just continuation of that training, and that's the mindset we're getting. Look at how they killed Lavoy Finicum. But I think they even went beyond into conspiracy to commit that murder. They fired upon him. He got out. And it looks to me like, and I said from the beginning, it looked like they tickled his ribs with either rubber bullets or something. And that jacket he had on, he could not have had a 9mm pistol in the side of that pocket. I think I lost myself in my train of thought earlier, but talking about that jacket, I have one just like it. A pistol, especially you see him when he gets out of the truck from the phone video. There's no sway. There would be not only a bulge, but the jacket would sway. So I am as certain as I can be that he did not have that gun. But I did say that he did have a 9mm, and he did have one. But I don't think he had it on him. Most certainly not. Contrary to him carrying the 6-shooter on his side all the time. Of course, you've carried a 6-shooter and sat in a pickup truck, it might gouge you a little bit. So, and obviously you see he's not wearing it when he gets out of the truck again. So I'm pretty sure he was unarmed. He was murdered. There was conspiracy, whether it be amongst federal agencies and agencies of the state of Oregon or the territory or however they're trying to claim jurisdiction. Certainly collusion and cover up. And it's a shame. And what they do, they take other people. And so the first round in Oregon, Emmett and Ryan, Pete, and then some others there, they get through there. And luckily, they had somebody that was pretty smart on the jury. You know, it was a fluke. It was an accident. It shouldn't have happened. They should not have been, found not guilty. They weren't found innocent, which a big difference between innocence and not guilty in the legalese. And the second round with Jason Patrick included, they didn't get so lucky. And I'm not sure how much time, but obviously they plan on sending him to the federal penitentiary or they wouldn't have rearrested him. It's really, really sad. And those that beat at the first trial that are, Marcus Mumford, one of the lawyers there, it was tased and attacked and charged. They did drop the charges. He's all like, produce the papers. These guys, produced the warrant. Howell's talking about that as well today. Get a warrant. Where was the warrant? And more from Jonathan Corbett, what was that? I think the useful idiot or something like. No, I'm sorry, butchered that. But anyways, articular basis. There's more. If you've not listened to Al today to this broadcast, it will be rebroadcast Thursday night here on UCY.tv, and you'll be able to find it in archives. It's on Real Liberty Media, and it'll be on UCY, both of the YouTube channels, and of course Hal's production page, this broadcaster page, reallibertymedia.com. I think if we had a few more folks applying these lessons from the Behind the Woodshed, we might not be finding so many times that we're in this wrong situation. And unfortunately, whether it be we being manipulated or out of ignorance, we place ourselves within another's grasp or their claimed jurisdiction. And if we can avoid that, I think that's most important. Instead of standing in the streets and protest, why not occupy in suit against these people, a call for arrest, and join the crime. Don't join in, okay?
Yeah. I feel like what's been going on with the current, activist situation right now is that we're just seeing is that a lot of activists, unfortunately, are going into exactly their playbook. We're seeing, they're going right into the game, and that's because, I feel like this country doesn't know how to resist anymore, and a lot of time, and I know definitely not how to resist is definitely not to what we've seen in the anti-Trump movement right now, which is, these people smashing in windows of businesses that are totally unrelated to, what they're supposedly protesting about. or lighting cars on fire. And that was, that's definitely paid provocateurs we've seen, like in Ferguson that were doing that. We're burning down local bakeries and stuff like that. How about burn down the fucking police station or whatever? If you really are, I know that the repercussions are, maybe not that, the repercussions would be too much for these people to handle, but something else in order to make a stand. I feel that's another thing that definitely not organized to do the things that be actually could do a hurt to the government or the banks or whatever. Occupy Wall Street, I feel like, was the only thing that maybe came up to about that level of strength. Back in 2011, we had that many people that actually could have done something, but in the end, it ultimately ended up getting sold out, and there was a point where they had like a Bank of America account at the end, and it quickly got dismantled. I believe that probably some of those people that actually organized the thing probably were disappeared or something, because that was about the closest I think that in the last 15, 20 years that there was ever a movement that was able to challenge the system, and it fell apart. It fell apart real quick. Now, I think that's in the Bundys. That's probably the Bundys. I think what was part of the reason why they demonized and took the stand against them, on the media, and they ended up shooting, making an example. I think was more what they did to Lavoy Finicum, was because that does if there was 100 of those across the country, if every town made a stand like they did, then there would be a serious problem for them. So they're going to make it seem like that's 100% unacceptable, and that you, at that point, can be killed, like Lavoy Finicum. Is that that's the way that the government does things, is that they will go to the lengths of killing somebody or killing people in order, if they want to make it seem like, to make something acceptable. And you look at Waco. That's another example where, people got together and made a stand against the government. Apparently they were stockpiling guns or whatever, which that's in your Second Amendment to have arms. There's nothing against the law to have many weapons. And this church that was apparently anti-government that happened in Waco, they tried to make it seem like it was some crazy cult. I don't believe that was really the case. And anyways, the way that they took them out was horrible either way. But they ended up killing how many people? Like 26 people at Waco? And
much more than that, and a lot of children. And people running out of the back door out of that fire were shot by whoever at whatever agencies there. That was a terrible situation. Vernon Howell was his name. David Koresh came out of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, little, I guess, so type of offshoot. They believed that government was the what was talked about in the Book of Revelation, the end time, the beast, which is a beast is a power or a government, as far as being referred to in the sense of biblical prophecy. So they saw Israel, or at least America. I don't know so much if they saw Israel, but the interpretation of that end is that there's a two-headed beast, one that spoke like a dragon, reared its head like a dragon. I'm sorry, I messed that up, forgot. But anyways, it's like a dragon, but was a lamb-like creature. So we see America of the past as, being Gentile and being, all for good. And now with this America to today, which, this works hand in hand with Israel, and it's really the cause of the wars. We bring war to people. Look at Syria. What in the world were we doing there? How we created it? We give these guys weapons. We see a guy driving a truck with Chuck's Plumbing in Texas on it, right over there, ISIS with its flags. Woo-ha! Big old 50 caliber machine guns. You know how much one of those guns cost? You don't just trade pebbles and sand for weapons like that. It's got to come from a lot of money to supply all that. So it's very obvious that it's created wars for us, and it's really too bad that more people don't see it. We're not the good guy. Americans are the good guys. The United States government is not acting in the interest of the American people. They're not the good guys. They are criminals.
when you look at it, when you look at it this way, is that 15 of our senators are dual Israeli citizens. I believe that if you have a dual citizenship with Israel, you're not an American. And if also even more of our congressmen have dual citizenship with Israel. So ultimately, their loyalties are split. And when it comes to Israel's interest versus the American people's interest, they're totally different. I'm not against the idea of dual citizenship as a whole, but I really do question it when it comes to politicians. I don't think politicians should have dual citizenship. And when it comes to people, I don't think that anybody should have a dual Israeli citizenship, because obviously you gave your your allegiance is obviously to one or the other. You can be loyal to Israel and their interest, or you can be loyal to the American people, but they're definitely two different things, two people's interests.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Let's see if this is the right one here. Yeah, so here's one from the Review Journal. Bundy BLM Bunkerville standoff video captures agent conversations. There's indications of a lot of alcohol having been drank by those the cops out there, the BLM cops. There was a lot, more than a big trash can full of beer cans and beer bottles. So the question was brought forth. This is from somewhere else, by the way, so I'm just going off this. I don't have this link in front of me to drop to you, but so anyways, a lot of drinking has been alleged that perhaps these guys were hungover, at least impaired. These cops, these ones with the guns at the gate under the bridge, the 12th of April of 2014. And I was there. I was under the bridge behind everybody up on top, underneath the sniper there. I didn't know that I didn't realize he was squatting. I guess I seen him when I was walking down the road, and after getting under down, it was steep, man. I'd been up all night. Arthritis had me just about where I couldn't go no more. But anyways, I parked me a good place under the bridge in the shade there. And, you know, it was plenty clear from Dan Love there that he was going to open fire on people. And people kind of just edged up a little bit at a time with their hands in the air. The guy, he was called to the witness stand, that approached the gate, that guy from media, I forget his name. But luckily, I guess maybe just him going up there alone there, and, you know, might have had something to do with the peace that we saw, because the cops didn't want peace. The sheriff told them to leave, and I counted them when they finally did leave. There was, I counted, but about 200 odd cars, I believe it was. I think I lost count, about 180 something, and I think somebody reported 210. Some of these had multiple people within the vehicle. So we're talking about they had a small army out there. I mean, snipers. Look at what instigated this. There's a discrepancy on grazing fees, and so they come and steal Cliven Bundy's cattle in a hard roundup. Cows were killed. Some were run into the ground. Some were executed, you know, if that's what you can call it. Just, I mean, shot. Cantankerous bulls. And a bull that you have for breeding like that, you know, is not a cheap animal. It's really terrible. When people, one day we're going to say, as people are saying today, you know, why didn't anybody in Nazi Germany do anything about it? And I think that same question is going to have to be asked again of the people of today in the future. We have an obligation to protect the American way. A lot of people might have a problem with that, you know, thinking that, well, as we're talking about the evils of government. Well, that is not America. That is not America. That's fraud. And as soon as we call these criminals out and hold them to account, the quicker we can really go back to living as a free people. We sure ain't really free in so many ways. What, the largest prison population in the world? Now that's, well, you know, you might dispute that with China because they kill most of their criminals. So, you know, are we any better in China? What about Russia? How many they got? Well, we got more than China. I mean, more than Russia. More than China, too, I guess. So But we need to start questioning what it is we're doing. We don't need to go by what's being told in the pulpit or from the preacher on TV, which is the news guy. All their religions, it's all in faith.
I think we actually have about 20 times more than Russia. Russia doesn't even have that many. That's always like 100,000 or something like that. They got about maybe 40%. They have like a third of our population though, so it's that, I mean, they are going to have less just for being proportional. America has 25% though, the world's prison population, but yeah, we only have 5% of the world's population. It's absolutely disproportionate, and we do have more than China. We have more than any other country. China, yeah, probably you could add some numbers onto that, to the amount of criminals that are probably killed. In China, China is definitely not any kind of model of a free country or anything like that. And the only reason I think that China is demonized on the media today, though, is because of their potential alliance that they may have with Russia in the future, and they've been developing. But I find China as more of a wild card than anything. They seem to be a country that could flip allegiances. China, United States, and comparing really, I guess you could say, known tyrannies versus this America that seems to be with the American people. They don't know that they live in a tyranny. We don't, the Bundy moment is going to be looked upon back like the Tiananmen Square incident, I think, one day. And I'm serious about that. I think that it's going to be one of those points where one man or multiple people stood up to the government. The only difference is that we'll know how Bundy ended up. Tiananmen Square, we don't know what happened to that guy. The guy might be still alive in a prison somewhere in China, or he might have escaped. Who knows? But that's actually kind of weird that no one knows what happened to that guy. Or back in Nazi Germany, I believe there was, you could say that there was, I think there was points where, people stood up, and like I remember there was like one protest that apparently happened like in 1940 something. And apparently they actually never were arrested. It was a very odd story. Sometime during the Nazi reign, and of course, there's other times where people stood up, like inside the government or whatever. There was almost an attempted removal of Adolf Hitler in 1938 that the British pretty much pulled away from. The British could have saved Europe from World War II if they would have went ahead with the coup by Oster. But in the end, the British pulled out of it, and the coup failed. I think Oster was killed, and of course, there was also, I think, Erwin Rommel. I believe he stood up to Hitler in 1944, which he was ultimately executed. Also known as the Desert Fox, made one of the best generals of all time when it comes to his military success, and of course, he did probably many despicable things with the Nazis during his time with their military, but he did at least stand up at one point. So there was at least some morality left in him. I don't know who's going to be. I feel like that there's going to be even more incidents where people are going to stand up, and people will show their resistance. If the Bundy, I think, will just inspire. Bundy will inspire other people. I think it has already. There's been similar incidents, and look at what's happened to Standing Rock. At Standing Rock, some people also try to distance themselves from. Like I've heard, some of the Bundy supporters apparently split on Standing Rock, but Standing Rock's a very similar incident, and I believe the Bundy family is in favor of the Standing Rock protesters. I believe on the Bundy Ranch page that I believe is moderated by one of the Bundy family members. I'm not 100% on that, so don't quote me on that. They were in support of the Standing Rock protest. Which
I've seen Carol Bundy post in support of at least their right to stand in protest. And again, when they come against people and spray water cannons on them in that freezing weather, for one, there's no justice in that. That's what, torture, punishment. What is it? It's certainly not what we'd expect from Americans, and especially not from police or law enforcement, or what we should be seen as peace officers. The they did fail in so many ways in bringing a proper stand. They did not. I don't think they had the right channels, but they were hobbled from the beginning. There was the stalking horses there. Somebody made a lot of money, you can bet. With all the money lost, somebody was picking up the change, and people were manipulated. I don't know the whole of it, but there was a lot of controversy and strife amongst those that in Standing Rock itself. And then when it came to people that would typically be called the Bundy supporter, the split comes from the so-called Black Lives Matter, the social justice warriors, but that's unfortunately, and a good friend from their painter. It's unfortunate that you have bitterness in that. I understand where it comes from, but also I see where that was interjected and made part of the play for the separation. And it's, again, it's just too bad we all can't really see through it. Everybody has their own idea and perception, and it's certainly biased. And it's opinion. Al was again talking about this today. Opinion. But beyond opinion, your opinion means nothing. There's obvious fact, and there's certain ways that things have to be addressed. You can't just hope or wish something into being. You are where you are, and you've got to work through from there and move forward. And if at this time in history right now, I mean, we are so advantaged of the people of this world right here that we have a chance to get to know each other. And not accept what we're told about people. We have a chance. Certain restrictions, of course, that there is other ways to get online to China, but unless you speak Chinese, you might have a hard time anyways if you did connect with anybody over there. But we do, around the world, face to face. We're getting to know each other, and we have a chance to change things. And we have to, most importantly, be more critical of ourselves than we are of anybody else, because if we're fooled, then we're gonna perpetrate the fraud upon others.
Yes. Yeah, we are privileged in that sense of that we have the we have the internet nowadays, which is not something that people 20 to 30 years ago could even said. And then we had the massive counterculture and protests in the 70s without the internet or whatnot. Imagine if those people, that generation, had the internet. I feel like that a lot bigger things could have been done. We can meet anyone. We can meet people from all around the country and connect people. That before we only could do it by a phone call, which is not quite the same. And you connect people from everywhere. The people that really would have been impossible to connect people from Germany or like I have. Have recently had guests from Ireland, have Facebook friends from all over the place. There's really no area where I don't have Facebook friends, and probably the amount of countries is well over 30 now. I did it kind of a long time ago when I had quite a bit fewer friends on Facebook. I went through and looked at all the countries or whatever they're from, and it was a lot. And then I could probably have added a few onto that list since then. And besides China, that's about the only country, the only gigantic country I don't have any Facebook friends there because you can't get on the internet in China apparently. Or you can get on the internet, but I think Facebook censored or whatever. I think I've seen people supposedly they had that at their city. I think it's certain people can get on or whatever. They say that you can't get on the internet in Iran and Cuba. I found out to be that a lie because I have friends from both those countries. There's other things I think they're censored in different countries, depending on what they believe is culturally insensitive. For example, I think YouTube is phased out or might be not allowed in Iran. It might be allowed in Iran. I don't know that for sure. But we definitely have the split, and that's why they are trying to learn the divide, because they know that because we can unite and we're more able to unite than ever, that they need to divide us on everything, whether it's nationality, whether it's political position, whether it's our religion. I see a lot of that, which has been one of the oldest, divide and conquer tools, and there's a difference between being religious and people belonging to Christianity, Islam, and all the different religions around the world. But when they use it to divide, and they use organized religion to divide us, and they use people like the Pope, and they use people of other high religious officials in order to divide us, clerics and Islam that like from Saudi Arabia or whatnot, that have preached out Wahhabist hate. And while we have over here in the United States, we've had these different branches. People like John Hagee that have taken over the Southern Baptist Church, and he's preaching out a pro-Israel total twisting of the Bible that guy preached.
Yeah,
I mentioned
you can actually trace that back even into the 1850s when the shift was being set for this acceptance of God's chosen people of Israel. These Khazars, not Semites at all, and then on through time you see in the history the settling in Palestine, and they were just like allowed a place, and then all of a sudden one day it's like, you let somebody sleep on your couch and they're kicking you out of your house and putting a fence up and making you, sleep on the creek or whatever. If you was that lucky to have water, I guess it's terrible. It's terrible what Israel has done. And look at South Africa. I mean, people didn't, say no apartheid, but what's the difference between there and Israel?
Yeah,
or should I say Palestine? Let me correct myself, please.
They helped each other at one point. The Israeli government was one of South Africa's allies, one of the few allies they had during the apartheid regime. Of course, there was the American government, which, one fun fact about the American government in South Africa was that Nelson Mandela was listed as a terrorist until 2008 by the United States government. It's funny that, during the time of Ronald Reagan, you brought him up early in the show, is that Reagan had Mandela listed as a terrorist, but he had Osama bin Laden listed as an ally and a friend. But, Americans, at least that's how you utilized them back then, is that Osama bin Laden met with Ibn Brzezinski and a little bit before Reagan in 1979, I believe they met. It was actually in 81. I'm not sure the year on that. But there's the infamous picture of those two meeting. Obviously, going back to the thing about the God's chosen people and that whole shift in Christianity, that was something brought upon later, in the 1850s and going on into, I know there's I don't know too much about it, but I think the Scottsville Bible started to make that shift. I think that's the name of it, towards a pro-Israel, maybe the Scottfield Bible, I don't know, but they made the shift towards a pro-Israel Christianity, a warping of the...
Yeah, that's correct. You're right.
Scottfield, or was it Scottfield?
Schofield.
Schofield, okay. Yeah, around, into the 1900s, the Zionist conspiracy started to really set in, because there was the Thomas Herzl and the architects of Zionism. They were really planning out from from about 1905. They tried to buy from the from the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. They tried to buy the land of Palestine from him for $150 million, which he denied, and he pretty much said that doesn't matter what amount of money that they gave him, he would never relinquish the land of Palestine to them. And I don't think it was coincidental that he had an uprising inside of his country from a group named the Young Turks, and then later on he also had World War I happen, and his empire fell apart by 1921. I don't think that was very coincidental at all. I mean, it's kind of like one of the things like the Russian Revolution. It was constructed change, and there was a few changes that were made around that time. Really, when you look at World War I, it set the stage for Israel to come about because it opened up the space for the British to take it. The British took it in 1917, and they promised it in the Balfour Declaration, 1917, to Israel. And also, another thing that happened in 1917 was the Russian Revolution. It's right around that time, some massive changes happened. Also, the German Empire fell apart, which set the path for them to for the World War II plan, Nazi Germany. would come about out of the ruins of the German Empire in the Weimar Republic and the total debauchery and corruption that the Weimar Republic was drowning in. That's why a man like Hitler was accepted by people. They believed him to be a savior from that. It's Israel, and then Israel came about in 1947 after World War II, and they said that because of the Holocaust that that they deserved the land of Palestine, that they deserved to go back to their quote unquote homeland. But the truth was that most of those people did not have any kind of genetic connection to the biblical Jews. A lot of those biblical Jews had converted to Islam at a later time and became the Palestinians. So really the descendants of the biblical Jews could very well be a lot of those Palestinians that they're bombing. The true anti-Semites, the true people bombing Semitic people are the Israeli government. But they love to say that about any of their critics. They automatically will call anti-Semitic, and also a bunch of other names, and they can keep parodying their lies. It's this, the media, as Malcolm X said, will have you hating the oppressed and loving your oppressors. And no true words can be said about everything practically today, as we see it. Is that you have people, hating people that stand up to the government here in the United States, from different people hating different resistant movements, but at the same time, they love whatever politicians, whether the people that were love Donald Trump or love the Bushes a few years ago, or even you had the people like, I would say that Bernie Sanders is ultimately one of them. Bernie Sanders is another one that's been involved with the support for, I believe he supported the Iraq war. He supports Israel. Everybody seemed to have been so infatuated with this guy back in 2016, last year, and the year before that, was his presidential run, and he was one of them. Donald Trump, a lot of people believed he was not one of them, and that they loved him, and he ultimately was one of them. You see his Trump supporters. There was like that one picture that was saying that it's like I could tell them to eat shit sandwiches and they would do it. And there would be some Trump supporters that would probably ultimately, that's how infatuated was Donald Trump. They believe he's some kind of like, they think he's Tony Stark or something. They think that they can build that's the only thing he's missing in Iron Man suit, and he'd be Tony Stark. He'd be the superhero.
Hey, I gotta ask about his hair. Did you notice how his skin used to be so orange and then like white under his eye bags were white, and that his hair kind of like got less offensive, and now that's even got a little gray on the side, so they're prepping him to go gray. Every president goes gray. So what did he see these first days of office? Did they really what's going on with the CIA? Is he kicking and screaming after they showed him the JFK tape and asked him if he really had any questions when it was time to do their bidding? This shadow government, the deep state, it really exists, and it's been going on, and it is tied in with Israel, and it is tied in with Germany, and the supposed controversy of ideology is so convoluted. It's a pitiful that we have any kind of free thinking left in this world. It's really time to, like I said, take a look at ourselves and what we think, because we're probably just the biggest idiot to the next person, right?
Well, I imagine that with Trump, I'm sure they did the whole normal thing to do with whatever president, which I'm sure something along the lines of showing them the secret JFK tapes and they show the real shooters or whatever. But I imagine, Trump can't be too surprised what kind of people he's dealing with, because, during his years as a real estate developer, he met with some pretty shady people. I think that he had, to be the real estate developer in New York, you have to have some connection with some Israelis, for sure. And, one of his top donors was Sheldon Adelson during the presidential campaign, which is a top Zionist financier. This man one of the richest men in America, the casino mogul, Sheldon Adelson. He's kind of, they have like two of them. Is that one finances the Republican Party, usually Sheldon Adelson, and then on the Democrat Party, usually Haim Saban will finance whoever over there. When it comes to like two prominent Israelis, Haim Saban is he's big in TV. He's the guy who produced the Power Rangers. He's a billionaire, believe it or not. And Allison's like a multi-billionaire, I think far richer than Donald Trump. He's, Forbes numbers around like 3.5 billion or whatever. I think Trump claims that he's around 10 billion or whatnot, but just remembers that no matter how wealthy he is that he is bought, and the people that rule over him are much, much more wealthy than he is. You're talking about the Rothschilds. I mean, whose family wealth is somewhere, some people say the highest estimates I've seen is 700 trillion, which would not shock me considering the value of central banks and, what they can do. They practically control the printing of money in many countries. So when you actually literally are the people that make the money, what is your wealth? I mean, is that even really a number at that point? It's more of it's really anything can become a speculation to what actually that's worth. And that's really when you think about it, and then that starts bringing up the question is like, what even is money? If these people can just make it, it's what they decide it's worth. That $1 bill, that costs the same to print as the $20 bill, is all like fucking monopoly money. I mean, what is it? Maybe a little minute difference in the cost because of the printing or whatever, or the plates that they have to make. It's a $100 bill to a $1 bill. Differences are very small on what it costs to print, but however, it's 100 times the value. I mean, they could make, like back in the day, they had a $100,000 bill. They could make one of those and it would still cost probably about the same as a $1 bill for them to print if they were to make such a bill again. Which I think they're going to have to bring some bigger denominations in the future because of the inflation. I mean, no longer does that $100 bill cover your groceries for the week if you have a family. It costs now $300 for groceries, I imagine, in most of the United States if you have a family. When it used to cost, 40 years ago, that costed maybe $75 or whatever, or maybe a little bit more than that. Soon, I could see the inflation start to spiral out of control in the next coming years as the petrodollar starts losing its value. The petrodollar is no longer being used as many countries for trade, and that's all it's based on, really, is commodities that's traded in, oil being the main one. That's why it's got the nickname, the petrodollar. We used to be a country that backed our money by silver and actually used to have a safety net, I guess you could say. And it used to be money. If you look at the definition, we don't have money anymore. Money is either metals of intrinsic value or something that's backed by that. But we have currency, and that's just decided by whoever runs the currency.
Yeah, used as money. Yeah, money.
They could literally, the way it's set up is that they could literally just write with a Sharpie marker $100 on a piece of paper, and it's no different than that $100. If they were to say that was worth $100 and they just got rid of all the greenback, green currency that we have, greenback actually was an origination. I think Lincoln was the one that initially brought about the greenbacks way back. But yeah, they got rid of all the green currency and they said, oh, you know what? We don't want to spend the money on printing those anymore. We're just going to make these little simple $1 bill, just like a one print on a piece of paper. If they said it was worth that, then it'd be worth that.
It's all faith in currency. I think that was a week or two ago. Al was talking about that again. I reference Hal Anthony behind the woodshed. Yeah, faith, and talking about the state's ability to coin money and so forth there, and money. That lawful money is gold and silver and coinage. So they could also, I guess, print or stamp a coin, mint a coin, and say this is worth what do we owe you? $500 billion. Here you go, boom. Let's just pay off the Federal Reserve, state by state. They can print a coin, their portion of it, and let them go spend that coin however they can, and then have the ability to use other types of currency, whatever type of exchange and barter on other types of of monies, whether it be Bitcoin or whatever. I don't like Bitcoin. I'd want something I could hold in my hand, but if that's what somebody wants to trade in, then that's on them. And we got to remember the income tax is well, it's not a law, and it's a scam, and it doesn't pay government. Everybody says, "Oh, you shouldn't complain about paying your portion to build the roads." Well, all that money doesn't go to build. It doesn't do anything except for pay interest on that money that you was talking about that was created out of thin air. It has no value except for what faith the people that use it have, and you're penalized if you try to go outside that system. Yeah, it's not good.
No, it is not, and it's it's a shame that the people have gone into this that are so deep in this illusion. And I think we should just go back to the days of using gold and silver as currency. Honestly, that actually is something that always holds its value, or at least using the gold and silver certificates. Which I saw apparently Russia was talking about that they're going to eventually go back to using gold on their rubles. They're going to back it by gold.
Well, let's not forget other metals. You got nickel and copper, a penny. What they've done to the penny now, and what they call chipping it back in Roman days, that was if anybody was caught counterfeiting, and that's what they're doing, even coining money now, putting these lesser base metals in there. That was executable offense, and that's what's going on now. You don't have copper pennies, and you don't have nickel nickels. So what kind of, that's another part of the scam. They've stolen every bit of the wealth. All the future of many generations is owed already, and people are enslaved. And you know what? People are figuring it out. So what are they doing? They're coming along with a genetic manipulation and modification to control people, and the artificial intelligence will follow it. Who's going to be left? Most people aren't going to be able to keep up with the technology and stay ahead of the curve, and it's going to be tough. You want to talk about the people during war and having to sleep out, wait till the Great Depression hits, and people have no idea how to live. It's going to be a terrible place, and we have, I think we at least ought to resist it. If you want to just lay down, then go ahead. But
we shouldn't talk about it as it's a certainty. It doesn't have to happen. All these horrible things that could happen, in the future in the United States, doesn't necessarily have to happen, and that's important for this. Now, people say, well, chances that we'd be able to do anything are pretty low. But isn't it better to actually try than, what do we have to lose? If we lose, we're going back to the same shitty system. But if we win, we win our freedom, we win our liberty. It's one of those cases where there's really not too much to lose, and it's only going to get worse. It's like right now, this is not as bad as it's going to get with their plans. There's going to be more authoritarian measures taken. I mean, now they're just starting to admit the stuff they've been doing for a long time. So it's kind of scary when they start to admit the stuff like that. It must mean that there's a high potential that there's more stuff. That's just the beginning of the rabbit hole. That they say that they can turn on your phone cameras whenever they want, that they can turn on your phone's mic whenever they want. What they're going to say in the future? That eventually they'll give you an RFID chip via vaccine, you won't even know it or something like that. That's the kind of stuff I really worry about. And those RFID chips, they're getting them down to like the size of a microscopic, like your dust. I hear stuff about like smart dust or whatever that they can just shoot at you or whatever, and they can track you. That's the kind of stuff that's being developed by our intelligence agencies or whatnot. The CIA, I imagine, use, and that's probably what they use against other spies nowadays, and they're probably using it against citizens more and more. I don't know how much they have used it against citizens yet. I imagine they probably have done it. It may not to a large amount of them, but probably already started. It is pretty freaky, actually, to the level of how 1984 only predicted so much, and I think that in many ways we've already surpassed 1984 and how far their technology is. But Orwell did a pretty good job, considering that it was in 1948 that he wrote that book. He just got the year a little bit off, and in many ways he might have been right actually, because in 1984 they might have already had cameras secretly put in TVs and stuff like that, and people didn't know. And it's just that they're admitting to it many, many years later now, here in 2017, we're finally hearing about the smart TVs or whatever that have cameras in. We don't know when they actually started that program. They might have, because again, you have to remember that the military, the government, their technology is way ahead of us. The stuff that we have now, they've had since 1985. They probably had little smartphones and stuff like that, and some of the high levels of the military back then, and they just released to the consumers now. They say that 16 years in the 1 year in the military is like 16 years in the civilian world when it comes to the technology development. So you can imagine there's some people in the military that are living way in the future compared to us. It's kind of a hard thing to wrap your mind around, but truth, and that's how the technology advances, and all these people are using technology for very nefarious purposes. And it is ultimately one major thing that they're using it for is to pretty much turn us and to track us. And eventually their plan is to turn us into pretty much just not much more than labor units or cattle. When you have to remember that a lot of the people that are in charge of this country are Zionists who believe that we are cattle, that anyone that is not one of them is Goyim. And they believe all non-Jews or whatever are Goyim and just cattle. So that's their mentality, and that's how it is.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was over here muted, and I was flipping pages. Let me get back up here to my mic. Yeah, we definitely are treated as cattle, vaccinated. They talk about herd immunity and stuff, which is ridiculous, and shedding and so forth. But I think we're definitely being breeded out of as a race on Earth. The race is almost won or run, but we still got a chance to win. We've got the cynics over here, the defeatists, in my opinion. So don't complain if you're not willing to step up. If you've not got a better solution, then maybe you should just lay down, or just go ahead and walk up to the gates of the slaughterhouse. Make a decision, because but if you don't make the decision for somebody else, make it for yourself. You think the world's too populated? Hey, jump off a cliff. That's my opinion.
Well, yeah, and that's another thing, is that of course, there's one of the most nefarious things that the elite have planned is the depopulation, which cannot be argued that that's in their plans. They've said it multiple times in their in public. They've talked about the how we're overpopulated, which is a lie. That the overpopulation is such a problem to this planet, because we have enough food to feed 12 billion people, and that's almost double the population that we have currently. We have actually, and also when it comes to land space, everybody on the planet could be fitted into the state of Alaska. So actually, when it comes to land, we have plenty of land. And also that 12 billion number, I'm sure, with modern farming practices and more advancement on farming, without using GMOs, because actually some of the biggest crop productions have been done without GMOs, but with more research or whatnot, I'm sure that can be adapted, to be 15, 16 billion as need grows. Anyway, thanks, Vince, for being on my show. We're about to hit the bumper here in about 30 seconds or so. And it was great talking to you again and doing a show with you again. And hopefully we'll do something else together down the road. Thanks to all the listeners that tuned in at UCY Radio or whatever you're tuning in from. Tune in from YouTube later on today or tomorrow.
point of no return, and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness spread amongst me. My people are so hungry that they attack without reason, like a fucking dog ripping off the hand that feeds them. Immortal technique is treason to the Patriot Act. So come and get me, motherfucker, cause I'm not coming back. This is the point from which I can never return. If I back down,